There comes a moment in every soul's journey when loving others costs you your own peace. And in that sacred moment, heaven whispers, it is not selfish to rest, it is holy to protect your peace. Beloved friends, there comes a point in life when the heart that always feels for others grows weary, not because it has stopped loving, but because it has been poured out again and again without being filled. You see, the empath is the one who carries everyone else's burdens in silence, who smiles when they are breaking, who forgives when they are forgotten. But today, I want to tell you, there is a divine season when even the empath must say, "Peace, be still. Stay with me, because what I am about to share may heal something deep within you." If you have ever felt guilty for stepping back, if you have ever wondered whether protecting your peace means abandoning your calling, this message is for you. Because, my friends, choosing peace is not the end of love. It is the beginning of healing. The empath's heart is one of the most beautiful and yet most burdened creations under heaven. It beats not only for itself, but for the world around it. It senses pain that others overlook. It notices tears that others ignore. And it feels storms long before they arrive. The empath carries within them a divine sensitivity, a gift placed by God to bring healing, understanding, and compassion into a broken world. Yet that same gift, when left unguarded, becomes the source of their deepest exhaustion. For when a heart constantly absorbs the hurt of others, but forgets to pour that pain out before God, it becomes heavy, weary, and worn thin. The empath's gift is holy. It is sacred. It is a reflection of the very heart of Christ, who wept for the suffering, who reached out to the broken, who touched the untouchable. But even he, the Son of God, stepped away from the crowds to find rest in solitude and prayer. He withdrew to lonely places not because he loved people less, but because he loved the Father more. He understood that divine compassion requires divine connection. Without retreat, there can be no renewal. Without silence, there can be no strength. You see, the empath often believes that to love deeply means to be endlessly available. They feel responsible for everyone's happiness, everyone's healing, everyone's peace. They say yes when their soul is crying no. They give when their cup is empty. They forgive without pause. They listen without rest. And they carry burdens that were never theirs to bear. But the truth is, even a vessel of love can crack if it is never refilled. Even a lamp meant to shine must return to the oil. The empath must learn what Christ himself modeled, that the gift of compassion must be guarded with wisdom. When your heart is constantly open without protection, the weight of the world can pour in until it drowns your spirit. You begin to confuse empathy with responsibility. You start to think, if I do not fix this, who will? But beloved, it is not your duty to heal every wound. It is your calling to be a channel through which God can work. There is a difference between carrying someone's burden and becoming their burden. When you take on what only God can handle, you step into a place that even love is not meant to occupy. The empath's gift must be covered by discernment. There are moments when the Spirit will whisper, "Step in." And there are times when the Spirit will say, "Step back." Both are acts of love. It takes wisdom to know the difference. Many lose their peace because they confuse availability with obedience. But obedience sometimes means silence. It means waiting. It means letting God work without your interference. True love does not mean saving everyone. It means trusting that God can save them without you. There is holiness in boundaries. There is power in stillness. The empath who guards their gift learns that peace is not selfish. It is sacred. When you choose to rest, you are not abandoning people. You are allowing your heart to breathe so you can love again with purity. When your compassion flows from overflow rather than obligation, it heals rather than drains. Love without peace becomes anxiety. Compassion without rest becomes martyrdom. But love grounded in peace becomes unstoppable. The empath's heart must learn to return to its source. Every act of kindness, every prayer, every word of comfort should flow from a heart filled by God, not emptied by people. When you spend time in His presence, your emotions align with His peace. You begin to discern what is yours to carry and what must be left at the feet of the Almighty. You start to realize that not every cry requires your answer, and not every pain requires your presence. Sometimes your silence allows God's voice to be heard louder. Even Jesus, surrounded by need, did not heal everyone in one day. He did not allow the cries of the crowd to dictate His calling. He moved according to the Father's will, not human urgency. That is the lesson every empath must learn. You cannot save everyone, and you were never meant to. You can love deeply, pray fervently, and give generously, but you must also rest intentionally. When you begin to guard your heart with divine wisdom, you do not lose your sensitivity, you refine it. Your compassion becomes sharper, not weaker. You start to sense where grace is flowing and where human striving must cease. You begin to recognize that the energy of your empathy is sacred currency. It must be spent where heaven directs, not where guilt demands. Because love given outside of divine timing becomes a burden, but love given within divine alignment becomes breakthrough. When you honor your limits, you do not diminish your gift, you protect it. You become like a well that stays full because it is connected to a living stream. And from that fullness, your empathy no longer hurts, it heals. Peace is often misunderstood. Many think peace means walking away, shutting the door, or cutting people off. But true peace is not an escape, it is a return. It is not isolation, it is restoration. Peace is the gentle call of the soul to come back home after wandering too far into the noise of the world. For the empath, this truth is deeply important, because the empath's heart is like a sponge. It absorbs every emotion, every vibration, every hidden ache. They feel what others feel, often more deeply than those experiencing it. Over time, this weight becomes too heavy. It presses on the mind, clouds the spirit, and exhausts the heart. And yet the empath continues to carry it, thinking love demands constant endurance. But peace whispers a different message. Peace says, come back to your center. Lay down what was never yours. Be still and remember who you are. Peace is not the absence of people. It is the presence of balance. It is the place where your spirit realigns with truth. When you choose peace, you are not abandoning others, you are anchoring yourself. You are remembering that the heart which gives love must first be filled with it. To choose peace is to allow God to restore the parts of you that compassion has stretched thin. It is to admit that you are human, that your empathy is powerful but not infinite. Even divine compassion must flow through a vessel, and that vessel needs care. When an empath chooses peace, they are choosing to stop confusing exhaustion for purpose. They are choosing to stop equating chaos with connection. Too often, the empath feels alive only when they are helping someone. They think if they are not fixing something, they are failing. But peace teaches that life is not only about doing, it is also about being. It is about standing still in the presence of God and remembering that He, not you, is the ultimate healer. You may carry love, but you are not the source of love. You may bring comfort, but you are not the comforter. To choose peace is to hand the burdens you've carried back to the one who gave you your heart in the first place. Peace restores what people deplete. Every interaction, every conversation, every cry for help takes a little piece of energy from the empath's heart. Over time, This creates spiritual fatigue. The empath may begin to feel detached, numb, or resentful, wondering why their once gentle nature feels heavy and tired. But it is not a sign of failure, it is a signal from the soul. It is heaven's reminder that even those who pour out must return to be poured into. Peace becomes the river that refills the well. It quiets the noise of the world, so the whisper of God can be heard again. When you step into peace, you begin to see things differently. You start to recognize that not every person who comes to you is meant to stay. Some were lessons, some were tests, and some were mirrors. Peace gives you clarity. It helps you discern between those who value your light and those who drain it. It gives you the courage to love people from a distance when proximity becomes toxic. And it frees you from the guilt that often comes with saying, "I need space." Because peace knows that distance is not rejection, it is protection. In peace, your empathy matures. You stop reacting to every emotion around you, and you start responding from wisdom. You no longer absorb pain, you acknowledge it. You no longer drown in others' emotions, you hold steady in your own. This transformation happens only when the noise quiets, when the soul finally rests in stillness. For in stillness, God reshapes your sensitivity into strength. He teaches you that peace is not fragile, it is fierce. It is the unseen power that guards your heart and preserves your joy. Peace is the environment where healing begins. When you rest in peace, your nervous system calms, your thoughts settle, and your spirit recharges. The energy that was once spent worrying about others begins to rebuild your inner light. You remember what joy feels like without guilt. You rediscover laughter that isn't forced. You begin to live not from reaction, but from restoration. And from that restoration, your empathy becomes more discerning, more grounded, more divinely led. When you choose peace, you no longer chase validation from others. You stop needing to be the hero, the healer, the helper every moment of every day. You realize that your worth is not measured by how much you carry, but by how faithfully you stay connected to the source of your strength. Peace gives you back your spiritual rhythm, the balance between giving and receiving, between speaking and listening, between action and rest. There will be voices that misunderstand your peace. Some will say you've changed, that you've grown distant, that you no longer care. But peace does not explain itself. It simply exists, steady and sure. The empath who lives in peace no longer needs to justify boundaries or defend rest. They understand that inner quiet is not a weakness, but a weapon against chaos. Peace becomes their sanctuary, their shield, their home. And when the empath finally chooses peace, they begin to radiate a different kind of energy. Not the anxious energy of constant giving, but the calm authority of someone who has met God in stillness and learned that silence, too, can serve others. Because from that silence flows a new kind of power. The power to love without losing oneself, to care without carrying everything, to feel deeply without falling apart. There comes a sacred point in every empath's journey when they must learn the language of love that is spoken through the word no. For the longest time, they have said yes to everything. Yes to being available. Yes to understanding. Yes to forgiving. Yes to sacrificing. Even when their heart was pleading for rest, they have mistaken self-denial for virtue and exhaustion for compassion. But true love, divine love, is not the endless giving of yourself until nothing remains. It is the wise stewardship of your spirit. It is knowing when to pour out and when to preserve. The word no, when spoken with a pure heart, is not rejection. It is redirection. It is the moment when the empath begins to love in alignment with truth rather than guilt. Many people have been trained to believe that saying no is selfish. They fear disappointing others, losing connection, or being seen as unkind. But every time the empath says yes out of fear, they abandon a part of themselves. They silence their needs to accommodate someone else's chaos. They begin to live in emotional debt, constantly paying with their peace for other people's comfort. Yet, love that destroys the giver is not love at all. It is a distortion of love. The empath must awaken to the truth that boundaries are not barriers to love. They are the structure that keeps love healthy, pure, and enduring. When you say no in love, you are not closing the door on compassion. You are simply closing the door on chaos. You are choosing clarity over confusion, peace over pressure, alignment over approval. Every no becomes a sacred act of self-respect. It is not about creating distance. It is about defining direction. For too long, the empath's path has been determined by the pull of other people's emotions. Their mood dictates your mood. Their urgency becomes your emergency. Their pain becomes your purpose. But when you find the courage to say no, you reclaim your divine right to peace. You take back your time, your energy, and your focus. The power of no is that it allows God to move where you cannot. When you stop trying to fix everything, you make room for grace to do its work. Sometimes love is not about stepping in, it's about stepping back. When you stop rescuing people from the consequences of their choices, you give them the space to grow. You let them experience the lessons that only struggle can teach. In your silence, they may finally hear the voice of God. In your absence, they may finally discover their own strength. That is not abandonment, it is wisdom. Saying no in love requires faith. It requires you to trust that letting go does not mean losing. It means surrendering control to a higher plan. Many empaths struggle with this because their compassion is rooted in fear. The fear of being unloved, the fear of being misunderstood, the fear of not doing enough. But love rooted in fear is fragile. It breaks under pressure. Love rooted in peace is firm. It stands even when misunderstood. When you say no in love, you are acting not from fear, but from faith. You are believing that God's timing, not your intervention, is what truly brings healing. The empath's no also becomes a mirror. It reveals who truly values you. When you stop saying yes to everything, those who only loved your compliance will fall away. But those who love your soul will remain. They will honor your boundaries because they see your worth. Boundaries are not about controlling others. They are about teaching others how to love you properly. They separate those who drain from those who pour, those who demand from those who give. Every time you honor your boundaries, you teach the world how to treat you, and more importantly, you teach your own heart how to stay free. There is the divine power in restraint. Jesus himself did not respond to every demand placed upon him. There were moments when the crowd cried out, yet he chose silence. Not because he did not care, but because his mission was not directed by noise. It was guided by purpose. Likewise, your compassion must be guided by discernment, not pressure. Not every cry for help is your assignment. Not every problem requires your presence. When you say no in alignment with divine wisdom, you preserve your energy for the places where your yes truly matters. Saying no is also an act of healing. It begins to restore the parts of you that have been stretched by obligation. It untangles the emotional cords that have tied your worth to the well-being of others. It helps you find the quiet where your soul can breathe again. In that quiet, you will realize that love does not demand constant sacrifice. It invites mutual respect. Real relationships do not crumble when you set boundaries, they strengthen. Because true connection is not built on convenience. It is built on authenticity. The empath's no is not cold. It is cleansing. It clears away what is false, leaving only what is true. It allows your love to grow deeper, wiser, freer. You begin to give from abundance instead of emptiness, from conviction instead of compulsion. Your no becomes a seed of maturity. It grows into confidence, peace, and clarity. It teaches you that every time you choose truth over appeasement, you honor the God who created you to be whole, not hollow. And in that wholeness, your heart becomes stronger, your empathy becomes clearer, and your love becomes a reflection of divine wisdom rather than human exhaustion. The empath's greatest transformation begins when they stop measuring their worth by the reactions of others and start aligning their lives with divine purpose. For so long, the empath has lived for the approval of people. Every decision, every word, every act of kindness has carried an invisible question. Did I do enough? Did I make them happy? Their heart has been conditioned to find peace only in the smiles and gratitude of others. But this constant striving drains the soul, because human approval is a shifting foundation. The same people who praise you today can forget you tomorrow. The same ones who draw near when you give may disappear when you rest. The empath's journey toward peace begins when they realize that the only approval that truly sustains is the quiet affirmation of God within their spirit. When you stop living to please people, you start living to please purpose. There is a sacred difference. Pleasing people is an endless chase. Pleasing God brings stillness. It brings direction. People pleasing is a performance. Divine pleasing is a partnership. It flows from love, not fear. The empath who once bent themselves to fit into everyone's expectations begins to stand upright in their identity. They no longer shrink to make others comfortable or stretch beyond capacity to prove their worth. They start to understand that obedience to divine purpose is greater than compliance with human demand. Living to please others often disguises itself as humility. It looks like selflessness, but deep inside it is bondage. It comes from the belief that love must always say yes, that peace must always yield, that kindness must never disappoint. But divine truth teaches something far greater. Love is not submission to human will. It is alignment with divine will. The empath's heart must learn to listen, not just to emotion, but to guidance. Every act of compassion must be rooted in discernment. The moment your love begins to cost you your peace, you are no longer serving God's will. You are serving someone's expectation. When you shift from people pleasing to divine pleasing, you begin to understand that peace is not something you chase, it is something you protect. It is not a reward given by others, but a condition nurtured within your spirit. You no longer need validation to feel valuable. You realize that you are already accepted, already loved, already enough. You understand that God's approval is not earned through endless giving, but embraced through faith and obedience. This revelation frees the empath from the emotional chains that once held them captive. They stop apologizing for their boundaries. They stop feeling guilty for needing space. They stop confusing chaos for connection. In divine pleasing, your actions become purposeful rather than reactive. You are no longer moved by pressure but by peace. You begin to give because you are led, not because you are manipulated. You begin to serve because it aligns with your calling, not because it earns affection. The empath who walks in divine pleasing moves with quiet confidence. Their compassion no longer drains them, it flows through them. They understand that they are a vessel, not a source, and that the vessel must stay connected to its maker. This shift changes everything. It transforms how you give, how you listen, and how you love. There is also strength in divine pleasing because it teaches you to let go of outcomes. When you live to please people, you constantly measure success by their response. If they are happy, you feel worthy. If they are disappointed, you feel inadequate. But when you live to please God, your measure of success changes. It is no longer about applause, it is about alignment. It is not about being understood, it is about being faithful. You learn to trust that even when others misjudge you, heaven still sees your heart. Even when people walk away, grace remains near. That awareness brings peace that the world cannot take away. The empath, who chooses divine pleasing, begins to experience freedom for the first time. They realize that they do not need to prove their goodness. They only need to live in truth. They stop chasing after love and start becoming love. Their presence becomes calmer, their words gentler, their energy lighter. They no longer absorb other people's emotions because they are rooted in a higher peace. They can listen without losing themselves, give without resentment, and serve without depletion. Their empathy matures from emotional reaction to spiritual wisdom. In this state, the empath's love becomes more powerful. It is no longer conditional, transactional, or fear-driven. It flows effortlessly because it comes from overflow, not obligation. They understand that divine love does not require self-erasure. It celebrates self-awareness. The more they stay connected to purpose, the more they realize that peace itself is a form of worship. It honors the Creator who designed them not to live in chaos, but in harmony. This transformation does not happen overnight. It unfolds as the empath learns to silence the noise of expectation and tune their ear to the still, small voice within. That voice teaches them when to speak and when to stay silent, when to help and when to step back. It reminds them that love is not proven through exhaustion, but expressed through obedience. Each act of divine pleasing strengthens their spirit and refines their compassion. They no longer feel the need to explain their peace to those who do not understand it. They simply walk in it, trusting that what comes from God will carry His peace, and what drains peace was never theirs to carry.